All right, in this ladder logic program, we're going to program a very simplified washing machine. One of the things that I want you to notice in this program is how ladder logic works. It does not work quite like a scripting language such as Python, which you've likely had some exposure to. Ladder logic scans from left to right, top to bottom, as fast as it can. The PLC is scanning through this program over and over as fast as it can. So any components of that program that can execute during that scan, which may take a millisecond or less, will execute. It doesn't complete one portion and use the time required for that portion before moving on to the next. Or rather, perhaps it does, but not in the same way that a scripting language would. All right, to start, let's clear everything out. So I'm going to move all the contacts and the coil to trash. I'll leave these two rungs in because we will need those rungs and more. And I'm going to get rid of these buttons. All right, now I need to add some things in the memory. To put water into the machine, we need a fill valve. I'm putting my initials on here. If you want credit for this assignment, put your initials after the values that you put in memory. The fill valve is Boolean. We also need a wash rinse motor. We also need a spin motor. Now, in a washing machine, it's using the same motor for wash, for rinse, and for spin. It's just running the motor in a different way or at a different speed. To simplify this program, we're going to just add two different booleans. We can pretend that perhaps they're different windings on the same motor. And we're going to need a drain pump. To pump the water out of the machine. All right, there are some more booleans we're going to need. In this fictitious machine, we have a sensor at the base of the drum to sense water level and a sensor further up the drum to sense water level. Again, a fictitious machine. So when these sensors sense that water is present, they send a signal. We'll say that the one in the base is maybe an inch above the base of the drum, and the one at the top is maybe 18 inches above the base. So when the drum is completely empty, neither of them sense water present. And when there's a couple inches of water in the base of the drum, the one at the bottom senses that water is present, and it's not until the drum is filled up to 18 inches that the top one senses that water is present. And I'm just going to call these low water and high water. All right, now I want to add a timer, and this will be the wash rinse time. And to keep things simple, I'm going to assume that it takes the same amount of time to wash the load as it does to rinse the load. You could have those as separate timers, which they should be. But we're going to keep it nice and simple. And I also need a counter. That drop down wasn't working real well there. And I'm just going to call this count. All right, now I need some numbers. I just need some values, and I'm going to enter these. They're going to be 1 through 6. All right, and now we can start programming. If I have missed something, I'll add it later. And immediately I found something that I missed. Need another Boolean, and that is a start button. So I'll add that. And it shows up down here. So let's go to contacts, and I'm going to start with a normally closed and set that to the start button. I'm going to click the other tab, drop this branch in, going to go to count, and I'm going to put in a couple of resets. And I want to reset both the wash rinse time and the count. So when the start button is not pressed, when the machine is off, both of these will be reset. Now let's look at what happens when you do press the start button. All right, when you press the start button, I want the count to increment up. So I'm going to count up, count. So the first time the PLC cycles through, the start button is not pressed, and so the count is reset to 0. When it goes through again, let's say in the meantime we've pressed this start button, it counts the 0 up to 1. The next time it cycles through this, a millisecond later, let's say, this will count up to 2. But I only want this to count up to 1, and so I'm going to put a comparison in here. I'm going to say that this only happens when the count is equal to 0. And I don't have a 0, so let me add that. I need another number. Make that 0. And by the way, I can go in and insert these values. 0 is 0, 1 needs to be 1. And I'll continue this through 6. All right, now that I've got those set appropriately, we'll change this to 0. So now, once the start button is pressed, it cycles through this and counts this up to 1. The next time it comes through, count is equal to 1, and so it does not increment this count again. I'm going to click on Other and add some more rungs in here and continue with the programming. All right, on this rung, this next rung, I'm going to want a couple of branches. So I'm going to put those in. One of the things I'm going to do with this rung is fill the tub with water. So that would be a result, an output, or a coil. And I'm going to place that coil right in the middle of this branch. That moves the branch over here. And this is going to be the fill valve. So when do I want to fill the tub with water? The washing machine is going through a cycle, and there are different steps in that cycle, and I'm using these counts for the different steps. So step 1 is to fill the machine with water. Step 2 is to wash the clothes. Step 3 is to drain the machine. Step 4 is to fill the machine again so that in step 5 you can rinse the clothes, and then in step 6 you drain the machine again. So I'm going to want to fill the machine in steps 1 and step 4, or on count 1 and count 4. So if you look at ladder logic, for, let's say, this count up to happen, you have to have the start button and you have to have this comparison be true. With a branch like this, you have OR logic. So I can put in a couple of equal to compares. I'll put one here and one here. And now, for flow to happen from left to right, you either have this comparison or this comparison, or both. It's OR logic in this orientation. So what am I comparing here with this comparison? Count ACC is it equal to 1, or is count ACC equal to 4? Now the count may be equal to 1 or 4 and the water is filling, but I don't want the water to overflow and go onto the floor. So I'm going to add something else in here. I want the water to fill up until the high water sensor is triggered. When the high water sensor is triggered, I want the fill valve to deactivate. So I'm going to take a normally closed contact and place it in here right before the fill valve. And I'm going to set that to water high, or high water. So flow can happen through this normally closed contact until the high water sensor is activated, and then flow can't happen through here and the fill valve deactivates. But there's something else I want to do, which is why I have this branch circuit, and that is to count up. I could put this on a different rung, and that may be a purer form of programming, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this count up onto this branch. And I'm going to set that to count. But I don't want this to be counting up every time the PLC cycles. I only want it to count up once the machine is full of water. So I'm going to put in a contact, this time a normally open contact, set to the high water. So we have flow for counts 1 and 4 from left to right through here. When the high water sensor has not been activated, the fill valve is open. At some point in time, the high water sensor will activate. The PLC will then start cycling through this program again. We'll still be on count 1, so we will have flow from left to right. That's logic flow, not water flow. But we won't have flow through here because the high water sensor will have just been activated. We will at that point have flow through here, and this will count this up to 2 instead of 1. The next cycle of the PLC, we won't have flow through here because count will be at 2, not at 1 or 4. All right, so this is the fill cycle. Let's move on to a wash or rinse cycle. You notice I said wash or rinse, so I'm going to want to drop in this branch to get that OR logic. On the output of this, I'm also going to want some branches. I'm going to have one branch, and let me see if I can drop another branch on the bottom of that branch. I can. All right. One of the outputs I'm going to want on here is running the wash-rinse motor. So that will be a coil that I will put in here, and I'm going to set that to the wash-rinse motor. I'll come back to outputs in a little bit, but let's start out here. Under what conditions are we doing wash or rinse? Well, that's the wash cycle, which is 2, or the rinse cycle, which is 5. So I'm going to put in a couple of compares, equal to, there, and there. And I'm going to say if the count, ACC, is equal to 2 or 5, then we continue on with this logic. Now, something that is important is that I only want to be washing or rinsing when the drum is full of water. So I can put a check for that in here with some AND logic on the high water sensor. So if we're on cycle 2 or we're on cycle 5 and the high water sensor is activated, then we can do this stuff. So let's continue on with this stuff. Now I'm going to need something to stop this wash-rinse motor cycle and advance to the next cycle, increment up from 2 to 3 or from 5 to 6. Now, in this case where I was filling the machine with water here on count 1 or 4, we were just waiting on this sensor to sense water. But here we want to wash or rinse for a certain amount of time. So here we're going to put in our timer. So I'm going to get an on delay timer and drop that in right there. And I'm going to set this to wash rinse time. And I'm going to get a count up and drop it in down here. Actually, I'm going to move this on delay timer to there. I like that position better. So this count is the count. This is the wash rinse timer. I'm going to come over here and do some things on the wash rinse time. How long do we want to wash or rinse? I'm going to set that preset to 4 seconds. On a real machine, it would probably be, 20 minutes or something like that. But I don't want to wait forever on this, so I'm going to set it to 4 seconds. So this will count up to 4 seconds. Now I'm going to get a comparison and drop it in here. So when the wash rinse ACC is at 4, a value of 4, no, I don't want equal to. Let me put that in the trash. I want less than or equal to. So go back to comparison and let me get a less than or equal to. Put that in here. When the wash rinse ACC is less than or equal to 4, this wash motor can run. Now I don't want this counting up as long as the wash rinse motor runs. If that would happen, we would come into count 2, logic would flow through here, we're at high water, this timer would start, the time is less than or equal to 4, so the wash motor runs, and this immediately counts up to 4, and we cycle through again. So we only end up washing our clothes for 1 cycle of the PLC, maybe a millisecond. So I need something in here to keep that count from happening until the wash RINS motor stops. So I'm going to get a normally closed contact and drop that in here and set that to the wash RINS motor. So again, we're moving left to right, top to bottom. Actually, I think I want to rearrange this logic a little bit. You can see that we are checking, we're starting the motor in this step above running the on delay timer. Since we're running left to right, top to bottom, I want to move this on delay timer up here. Let me see if I can find a place to drop that in. Good. And I'm going to move the wash motor down there and this comparison down there. So now, as we're cycling left to right, top to bottom, we're coming in here on count 2. We have the high water sensor, and we're starting this on delay timer. The timer is running, then we come down to this comparison to run the motor. Once the motor turns off in that particular cycle, we come through and count up to count 3 out of count 2, or count 6 out of count 5. I think this is probably a bit more correct than what I had there before. While we're here, I've got this timer set up. Let me go ahead and get this counter set up. It is going to reset once you turn the machine off, but I'm going to go ahead and put a preset in here of 6. 6 or anything higher should work fine. All right, so we've got this cycle to fill the machine, or cycles 1 and 4 to fill the machine, cycles 2 and 5 to wash or rinse. Now let's put in a rung to drain the machine. So again, I'm going to want some branches. By the way, if you run into this problem where everything isn't fitting on your screen, on a Mac, I think you can hit Command -sign to shrink the graphics on the screen. On a PC, Windows-based machine, I think it's Control plus and minus will scale your window. That way you can see everything, and you can also, when you get your screenshot, make sure that everything is up there. I'm going to drag a branch in here, and let's put in another branch. And I'm actually going to want another branch inside of this branch, like so. All right, here we have counts 1 and 4, here we have 2 and 5, and here we're going to want 2 and 6. So these are going to be equals comparisons. I'm going to drag one into there, another into there, set these on count ACC, and variables, not 2 and 6, 3 and 6. All right, let's get some coils. There are 2 things that I want to have happen at the same time, and I'm going to set those there and there. And those 2 things are that I want to spin the drum to get the water out of the wash, out of the clothing. I'm going to run a spin motor, and I want to run a drain pump to pump that water down the drain. I want to stop doing these things when the water is below the low water sensor. So I'm going to put in a normally open contact here and set this to the low water sensor. So as long as this sensor is sensing water, these things will happen. When this sensor stops sensing water, these things will stop happening. When this sensor stops sensing water, I want to move on to the next cycle count. And actually, makes me think of something. I probably want this count to go up to 7. I want to be able to move beyond 6. It'd probably still work if I didn't have that, but I'm going to leave it at 7. You can try it on yours, see if it works at 6. But let me get a normally closed contact, put that here, and set that to the same low water. And then I will get a count up and put that here and set that to count. So if we are on count 3 or count 6, we have flow on this rung from left to right. We don't have flow on this rung, 3 or 6, or on this one, but we would on this one, from left to right. If that low water sensor is sensing water, we will be spinning and pumping. On the cycle, which it stops sensing water, we will no longer have flow across here, but we will have flow across here, and the count will increment up 1. So if we're at 3, we'll go to 4, and the next time we cycle through, we will have flow here. If we're on 6, it'll increment up to 7, and the machine won't have anything to do. So if I press start, nothing happens. So I have a mistake here. This needs to be count ACC. Change that. Now if I press start, we immediately, the count goes up to 1. This fill valve is filling, and we're waiting for first the low level. I'm going to have to pretend I'm the water and activate the low water sensor, and then when I activate the high water sensor, the count should go up to 2, and we should go to the wash rinse cycle for 4 seconds, after which the count should go up to 3. Let's see if that happens. There we are, washing and rinsing. Should happen for about 4 seconds there. Then the count went up to 3, and now I have to be the water again. So the machine is spinning and draining. I'm going to turn off the high water sensor, and then after a while I'm going to turn off the low water sensor, and when that happens the count should go up to 4 and the machine should start filling again. Alright, the count is up to 4 and the machine is filling. I have to be the water again. I'm going to turn on the low water sensor, then turn on the high water sensor. Count is up to 5, and we're on the spin cycle for 4 seconds. Then the count is up to 6, and we are spinning and draining again. I'm going to turn off the high water, turn off the low water, and the cycle is over. The count is now up to 7, and we're done. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the machine and get the laundry out.